Welcome back to Twisted Justice Files, where we explore the most disturbing and complex cases within the criminal justice system. Today, we're diving into the stories of teenagers who committed shocking crimes and are serving long sentences. These cases raise difficult questions. Should teens be held to the same standard as adults? Or is there hope for rehabilitation? Let's take a closer look at their stories. Dylan Shoemaker was just 16 years old when he made a decision that would forever change his life. In March 2013, Shoemaker was babysitting his girlfriend's 23-month-old son when, in a fit of anger, he beat the toddler, resulting in fatal injuries. Shoemaker claimed he didn't intend to unalive the child, but a jury found him guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, sparking debate over whether his age and intent should have been considered more carefully. John Freeman was just 16 when he and his cousin committed a crime that devastated a community. In 1993, Freeman and his cousin lured 4-year-old Derek Roby into the woods, where they brutally unalived him. The case shocked the small town in New York where it occurred. Freeman was convicted and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, and his case remains a significant point of debate around juvenile sentencing. Dexter Johnson was 18 when he and his gang committed a terrifying crime in Houston, Texas. In 2006, they carjacked a young couple, subjected the woman to sexual assault, and ultimately unalived both victims. For his role in the brutal crime, Johnson was sentenced to death. His case has sparked controversy, particularly around the issue of whether teenagers should face the death penalty, as he was just barely an adult at the time. Antonio Barau was just 13 years old when he and a friend carried out a shocking attack on his 78-year-old great-grandmother in 2012. Armed with a hatchet, Barau and his friend intended to rob her, but the situation escalated and they ultimately unalived her. Barau was sentenced to life in prison, but he will be eligible for parole after serving 35 years. This case, involving such a young offender, continues to raise questions about the handling of juvenile justice in cases of extreme violence. Candice Cook was only 15 when she found herself involved in a robbery gone wrong. During the attempted robbery, the situation escalated and the victim was fatally shot. Although Cook did not fire the weapon, her involvement in the crime led to a conviction under the felony murder rule. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison, highlighting the harsh reality that even indirect participants can face severe sentences under this legal doctrine. T.J. Lane committed one of the most shocking school shootings in U.S. history. On February 27, 2012, Lane, then 17, walked into Chardon High School in Ohio and opened fire, unaliving 3 students and wounding several others. During his trial, Lane showed no remorse, even mocking the families of his victims. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and his case remains infamous for his cold and calculated demeanor during the proceedings. Damon Kemp, 17, was convicted of first-degree murder after a heated argument with his roommate, William Riley Gall, ended in tragedy. Kemp shot Gall multiple times, resulting in his death. Kemp claimed the shooting was accidental, but the jury didn't believe his defense. He was sentenced to life in prison, a stark reminder of how quickly conflicts can spiral into deadly violence. Jacob Morgan was 17 when he was accused of setting a fire in his family's home, which resulted in the death of his younger half-brother. Morgan maintained that the fire was accidental, but prosecutors argued that it was deliberate. He was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and arson and sentenced to life in prison. His case raised important questions about whether the court took into account his mental health and age when determining his sentence. Philip Chisum, at just 14 years old, committed one of the most horrifying crimes in recent memory. In 2013, Chisum followed his high school math teacher, Colleen Ritzer, into a school bathroom where he attacked, sexually assaulted, and unalived her. He then disposed of her body in the woods. Chisum was sentenced to 40 years in prison, with many left wondering what could drive such a young teenager to commit such a heinous act. Roxana Sikorski was only 15 when she and her boyfriend plotted to unalive her entire family. Although the plan ultimately failed, Sikorski's role in the attempted murders led to her arrest and conviction. Citing her troubled upbringing and mental health struggles, the court sentenced her to 10 to 20 years in prison. Her case is a complex reminder of how some young offenders are influenced by external factors, including abusive relationships. Jalil Smith Riley was only 16 when he participated in a robbery that resulted in the death of the victim. Although he did not pull the trigger, his involvement in the crime led to a felony murder conviction. Under the law, anyone involved in a crime where a death occurs can be held responsible for murder. Smith Riley was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison, raising questions about the fairness of the felony murder rule for teenage offenders. These stories are tragic and complex, with young lives forever changed by violence. The teens involved in these cases now face decades or even life behind bars. But the debate continues. Are these sentences just, or is there room for second chances and rehabilitation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated with more twisted tales from the justice system.